any answer. I've had that interview before. I came in, I thought I was interviewing for one job, and they gave me an interview for another job, and I was totally unqualified. We had a good laugh about that in the end. And I joke that we just all wasted it now. But if you don't know it, state that, right? Don't present yourself as something that you aren't. And expect the same in return. Going back to that story where I actually walked away from a job where they were not treating me ethically or that I didn't follow policies that were working. It's perfectly fine to walk, right? This is business. In the end of the day, you have to be happy enough to get up out of bed, physically. If we ever physically go back to work, get ready, drive to work, do your work, come home, and not go absolutely bonkers, right? There's a happy medium that you have to have. You don't have to love your job. You can't despise it every day. You have to have that happy medium. And part of that is working for a company, believing in the mission that you're doing, the way that they're going about work. So there are opportunities for you to ethically, kind of look at and make decisions and present yourself through all of, writing a resume, putting your LinkedIn out there, going on an interview, going on a second interview, and even accepting a job. There is a right way to do that. There's a wrong way to do that. And we're not going to go into that, but that's a little too kind of deep of, comparing offers versus all of you get multiple offers. Hey, this one's going to give me $5 more. This one's got free country fares in their lounge. You have to balance that out. But how you go about that is again, looking at them and making sure that their morals and their ethics and what they are, or what that company is about, and how they do it is very important. I walked away from a job that I thought I would love because the way that the company was about its business, I didn't agree with. And that's fine. The company's still in business, the project is still in business. So the last kind of section that we have is kind of launching a new career, getting off to a good start. You're all going to have a first job post your, university degree or whatever you call it. Starting that off, we all have a first job. No one ever came into their second job. You've always had there's always a first job out there. So what are ethical dilemmas that you need to be looking out working with corporate? So the first thing I would try to point out, again, in a kind of pro tip, any of these items can show up at any point in time, regardless of the reputation of the company. You could be a Sterling, it could be St. Jude's in Memphis, which works very hard on children. It's a wonderful organization. They could still have these problems. You could be the Vatican in Italy, actually Vatican City in Italy or whatever. They have their own problems too. These things can crop up and they can come and go, right? Sometimes things are good, sometimes things are bad. Things to look out for: unethical leadership. And that could come at any level, right? If one person is reporting to you, theoretically are a leader. Looking out for unethical leadership. Things that often come up, padding a bid out to a customer and saying that, well, maybe we can get a couple extra bucks from you. Or lying on, we had this engineer work 70 hours, it was only half of it, things like that. The decisions that they made. Again, Bernie Madoff ran a gigantic Ponzi scheme where people lost millions and millions of dollars. Some people lost their entire life savings with it. Having that type of leadership at the top. It's hard, and I'll point this out, I think, on other slides. It's very hard at the entry level of kind of viewing this kind of top leadership or leadership for corporations, especially many of you who work for Fortune 500s or very large corporations. Some of these things are just kind of beyond your purview. I will tell you that I have never met the CEO of a company I worked for until about 6 months ago, and I actually now work for the small scale. So, have you ever met Professor Cross? Have you ever met the CEO of L3? Okay. So again, Professor Cross had a much higher position than you will be walking into at the end of his career. So maybe, hopefully, you will meet the CEO of that. But there are some things that are just not at the purview of entry level or people that are starting out. That doesn't mean that there isn't leadership at your level. There are people that will be leading you. Section leads, team leads, things like that. Unethical leadership can permeate into any layer of an organization. Toxic culture is an interesting one in that, it is, again, it's making people like they don't want to be there. It's making it difficult for you to complete your work or put out a good product or provide an amount of labor without having anxiety and stress or things like that. There will be anxiety and stress at work, right? We do that to ourselves. Or it's a dead end. So a customer comes in. But a toxic culture is one that permeates, either a group, a company, things like that. And generally these organizations don't tend to stick around long. Some of them do. One way or another, it's acceptable to berate an employee in a meeting in front of their peers. That is a toxic culture that honestly should. That actually was the reason that I left a company that I felt was unethical. It was very, very common for management to come down and scream at lower level employees. Even if it wasn't directed at me, it was very unethical for me to stand by to let this permeate. And it was so cancerous that it was best for me. Instead of fixing it from the outside, I tried, but it kind of backfired on me. Discrimination. So ethical and legal are sometimes intertwined, and sometimes they are not. When we talk about discrimination, there are the legal definitions of that. We cannot discriminate on the basis of sex, religion, gender, orientation, veteran status, disability, things like that. There are, discriminating against that. There are even, some other ways that you can discriminate that are not kind of legally protected. I knew a manager that would not hire women of childbearing age. Why? Because they go out on maternity leave. That was very unethical, and trust me, he's probably not the only person that ever did that in his life. I had another person that I knew was a female manager, and she would not hire other females. She felt that, for whatever reason, that she only wanted men. That was illegal, things like that. But that was a form of discrimination. And falling into that is a form of, is harassment. You're harassing someone because of some group or subgroup that they fall into, color of their skin, their gender, their, country of origin, things like that. Each of these can kind of rear their head. And you see discrimination across that. It could be sexual harassment. That's generally the one that you hear talked about the most. Generally, a lot of companies you will begin to, when you get out into your career, there will be sets of kind of like corporate training that you have to do every year. Legal and ethics, sexual, sexual discrimination, things like that. Sexual harassment. And you'll take these kind of year over year, and they kind of joke that, you have to go to your corporate training. But these aren't important, and they wouldn't be important if they didn't exist. Fraud is kind of a multi-pathway of having an unethical company. Fraud could be financial. Fraud could be on promises that you are making out to your customers or out to the regulators or things like that. It could permeate itself in a lot of different ways. Mostly we see it as in financial fraud. Bernie Madoff again in a Ponzi scheme stole billions of dollars off of people to fund a lavish lifestyle. That was definitely fraud. Theranos, again, this woman, Elizabeth Holmes, had taken a lot of investors' money and made promises about what the product was doing. Again, living, you kind of see this over and over again, living a very lavish lifestyle, private jets, jewelry, purchase homes, big salaries. And yet she was, again, was presenting her company as being this ethical and we're making these life-changing blood tests and it's going to be great, things like that. And then all was just a house of cards, right? It was very sturdy. Eventually fell apart after she was investigating the Wall Street Journal. And now today, literally today, is sitting in the classroom in San Jose, California, trying to see if she would be able to stay out there. I'm going to guess not that the maximum is going to be 20 years. I'm going to say she's going to get 2 to 3 years in Camp Cupcake. Anyone know who Martha Stewart is? Anybody? All right. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Who's Martha Stewart? Yeah, the bakery lady. Yeah, so she's like a lifestyle person. Before Kardashian and things like that, right? She bakes, she sews, she does home decor, she's decorating, things like that. Well, she went out and sold a bunch of stock on an insider tip and then lied about it to the SEC. Well, she ended up going to jail. And she's fine, she actually is, most people don't even remember that she had it. But that was fraud as well. And I think the last thing, and some of these things you again, the discrimination and harassment, that is how you treat others. You have full control of that. How other people treat you, not so much. One of the ones, fraud is really hard for an entry-level employee outside of billing their time wrong when we're saying that you're doing work when you're not. It's pretty hard for you to do. Fraud generally bubbles up about larger things. The one thing that you do have to be cognizant of, one specifically for your rules, is abuse of company property. If you send an email to a friend on your company email, who owns that email? Anybody? The company owns that email. Whatever you do, it is owned by that company. Anything you do on your company phone, anything you do on your company laptop or your company desktop, things like that, that is the property of the company. So abusing that, and it can stem from anything like, a lot of companies make it harder and harder. They make it harder and harder every year to abuse these kinds of things. Online gambling, adult sites. Those of you who are Redditors, what does NSFW stand for? Not safe for work. Any of those types of things. Abuse of company property. Running up phone bills. Watching YouTube videos and things like that, stealing bandwidth. BitTorrent, or that's always kind of a funny one. We found people that are crypto mining on their company equipment because it's on their electricity. So that is the one that I think out of all of these, right? It's pretty straightforward. This is the company asset. This is the company property. I need to be doing things that you approve of. A lot of you again are going to work with large organizations who have limitations, lockdowns, like this on laptop, desktop, company phone, things like that. And then number two, there are very large policies that are written by the department to say what you can and cannot do. Crisscross, if you ever have to fire someone for abusive company. I have also had to, because again, maybe it was the same guy, but yes, it was in Lockheed. I was the technician sent out. It was cataloged, labeled, filed. It was quite extensive, and I've seen that both at Lockheed and when I was in the military. It wasn't that it was on; he was viewing it on company property, storing it, person at Lockheed storing it. But we found persons basically come in every day and spend 8 hours doing that. Go figure. I think you would know better than a guy was in his 50s by that point, but yes. I have 10 minutes. So, all right. So I think I only have. So fostering an ethical workplace. This is something that you need to be doing, and the ability to go out there. What should you be doing to foster that? Give credit where credit's due. There is nothing more powerful than giving credit to someone who worked on something, or giving a compliment, or raising somebody up, and being seen as this ethical. No, great job, John, or great job, Sally, or whoever. And no, really, I have to give the credit to so and so. They worked really hard on it, things like that. A very ethical thing to do is raising someone else up and not taking credit where. Now, on the flip side of that, if you did something great and you did something you're getting, take credit for it. It's not bragging. There's a way to humbly go about taking credit for work that you've done or things that you're going to be doing. I think the biggest thing that for you, for ethical, and one of the things that I struggle with is you take the weight of the world on that. No, I need to get this. No, I need to get this code out. Oh, I need to fix this. You take this and it kind of snowballs, right? Oh, I missed the deadline. I'm sorry. What you need to be cognizant of is to be communicating. You are not, unless you're a sole proprietor, there's a whole company of people working on problems just right along with you. You have a manager, you have an HR staff, all of these different things that can help you. Don't take the weight of the world upon yourself, personally. It is better, I'm sure you've all heard of it. It's better to ask forgiveness than it is to ask permission. I will tell you that does not work in the business world. It's better to ask permission than it is to ask forgiveness. So one of the things that you can do in fostering, doing deliverables, making sure that your work is turned in on time, and doing all these other things, the promises that you make. If there is something that goes wrong, let someone know. Letting someone know earlier than later is always the best path. I have worked as an adjunct professor for many years. You should hear how many excuses I have of why assignments have been late. I will always give you generally a free pass to say, hey, something's come up. My assignment's not going to be by 11:59. I have an extension until 8 a.m. No problem. No mistake, things like that. when I get if you're due at 11:59 and it comes in at 12:07 a.m. and you go, I pushed the button at 11:59, doesn't that count? That generally doesn't really fly. I get that one quite a lot. Well, what if I push the button? It's when it gets, don't blame me, blame Cam. And I think lastly, one of the things that you can have as an individual is building your time contract. Both Professor Cross and I defense billing your time, both overbilling and underbilling is a huge deal. We go through training year after year after year after year, make sure that we are charging the government, charging that end customer, whatever it is. That is something that you can affect at your level, is being cognizant of what time you're putting in. If you not overbilling, not underbilling, it's something that's very important. And again, kind of going back to that other approach, building these habits early makes them second nature. Now that I'm no longer in defense, I'm still very particular about my time, when I bill, how I bill, because I have to put in time that I sales pursuits and letting the company know what work I am doing. It is very important. So what happens if you do see something in the workplace and you see some shortcoming during yourself or owner? There are whole structures put in place. There are rules and regulations put in place. If you're working in a regulated industry, finance, like that. There are rules in place outside of your organization that kind of govern what you do, let alone the rules and regulations of the company that you work for. You have management expectations, right? You have the ability to report something that you see is unethical, report to your manager. If your manager is doing something unethical, which I have seen, you are free to go to your manager without having them. You don't have this kind of, people kind of see this very linear progression. If I have a problem, I need to talk to my manager. He has a problem. No, you can go as far as you can. Now, if you have some problem, be realistic. You can't go to the CEO because you saw someone stealing printer paper out of the printer or something like that. But if you do see something, you do not have to go to your direct peer manager. You can go to whatever. You are generally protected with that, especially with corporate regulations. And rules and regulations by something called quid pro quo. If you report something and you see something and you say something, they can't come back on you. And then, say that it doesn't always happen. But you can have some protection of, hey, I raise my hand, I'm trying to do the right thing. You have HR departments. HR departments are very specific, especially in large companies, escalation points, ways to handle these things in very myriad ways of doing things. Is it financial fraud, discrimination, is it sexual harassment, is it whatever, whatever could come up as an ethical dilemma for you as an employee. They have a pathway of kind of managing that and taking that, I don't want to say off your hands, but working with you and having a process with you. And then there are available hotlines, again, going to things like finance, banking and finance, defense, healthcare. There are hotlines if you feel that you need to report this even outside your company. So there's, you see something, say something, defense, there's the fraud, waste, and abuse. Actually, in any government, there's a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. There is a, for people who carry security clearances, there is a hotline on the FBI, OPM, I don't know, whoever it does. There are ways that, you can report, you hear these things called whistleblowers. There are mechanisms in place, a lot of especially with financial fraud. There at the SEC and there's a lot of people that are very interested to talk to you. So there are things even if your organization, if you don't have the ability to go within your own organization, there's a pathway out of it. And then lastly, think about the legal obligations that you have. It's kind of a dilemma. And one I have to they talked about a doctor who, they talked about healthcare and things like that. It's a lot of what we talked about because the professor has an expert in healthcare law. But what are your legal obligations? Can this come back? Going back to this Theranos, again, this woman who is being on trial this week. It should be on trial for many reasons this week. There are people that have come up there and said that they came forward and were testifying against because they had a legal obligation. I have a legal obligation, a moral obligation, and things like that. There are some kind of wraparound things that will, kind of figure out and get in there that that you may be held accountable. So you have to think about these things in the end. And I guess I'm a little longer than I wanted to, but so there's a quote here. Know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away. For bonus point, what's the song on the world? There's going to be a point in your time when you have to walk away. And I did that. I had a program that was classified and attempted to raise up some issues that I had to be treated, both harassment and discrimination. And it just didn't go anywhere because the people that I reported it into couldn't come into the program. They didn't have the same classified, they didn't have the same experience that we did. I chose to actually work. So you may run, you may find that sometimes it's easier to walk away than it is to change from inside. Maybe you can elicit change by life. If you're brave enough to leave and say and walk away because you're not being treated, conditions not being unfair, your conditions not being ethical. Sometimes that's sort of makes people have to. Why did 60% of the engineers do that? Sometimes the change that you want to have is organization. Sometimes you will cause that change by. And I hope that maybe my choices different on this question. Put some things in my exit interview and this is the reason I'm not found another job somewhere else. So I think the last thing I'd like to give you is being seen as an ethical contributor or employee or things like that should be your goal. When down the line again, you meet someone else in a splash work like that in the future. What you want them to say about them, that is an ethical person, that is a person who's a moral person who I would like to work with, that's a person I can recommend, that's a person that I feel is going to be doing the right thing for our organization, the right thing for our customers, the right thing for our stockholders, whoever the right, having to be the right person. So working on that, again, it is a muscle, it's something that you need to work on, and you'll be challenged with this, seeing things throughout your career in different ways. You will see things in different angles in your early career, your mid-career, your late career, whatever. So it is something that is going to change over time. I think doing the right thing is generally kind of easy to see, but it's sometimes hard to enact. So that's all I kind of have on this. I think, what do I have, like 2 seconds?
You've got a couple of minutes.
Okay. So I want to thank you for letting me come out and talk about this. I hope, again, we're not going to remember my name, my face, what I did, or whatever, and then after this class. It is easy to kind of remember my name is Jay, but I'm sure some of you are going to go home and have a conversation with me. There's a guy there, and his name was the letter. Was his name R? Yeah, R. His name was R. It was something else. You're not going to remember my name. You're not going to remember my name. That's fine. What I want you to take away is that there are these opportunities, and you will get these challenges that throughout your life. From you're sitting in this chair today, the day that you retire, being able to recognize them and trying to understand and do the right thing, both for you, your organization, your family, like that, is something you will be challenged with over the times in your career. I have seen things that made you take a step back. That again, I maybe. So, and I'm not, again, I don't have as much. It is something you have to get cognizant of, aware of, and something you need to work on. I get like 2 minutes to talk about it. So again, one of the reasons that I do get to come out here is that I saw sponsors need to come out here, and it's part of my job to talk to students in technical groups. So again, ISACA, the easiest comparison I can do is iTrack. We are a non-for-profit business association in cybersecurity, IT risk, programming, and a bunch of different, a whole bunch of different people that have come around and coalesced around us. We are there to, as an organization, use, and we do a lot of different. One of the things that we do is we sponsor scholarships out here to the university. We do give money to the department, specifically through the cybersecurity club. So as part of that, you can apply for those scholarships. But some of the other things that we do for students to do training by ISACA is the certification provider. We provide certifications for IT audit, risk, cybersecurity. If you are interested in these, I'll send the link along to Crossruns automatically. We are providing classes that are starting in November. It's online on Saturdays. That will lead to, you can take the training course with us for a very low amount of money. We're only asking $25. These classes on the economy like out there in the world, cost $3,000 to $4,000. Same instructors, the same material, everything else. They're offering it to students for $25. If you don't have $25, I will write a $25 check out of my budget. I will make sure that everyone that wants to is more than welcome to take it. We're here to spread knowledge, spread our ability to engage with students and things like that. Last year I gave away $1,000. We're very lucky that we had an influx of money, spending a lot during the pandemic. But we do a lot of things. If you are interested in our organization on how we help your career, even now, we do sponsor the cybersecurity club here. Mario's last name is he's the president of that. Friday we sponsor that organization on campus. But let's talk about it. A lot of information out there. If you are interested about it, if you are interested in cybersecurity, if you are interested in campus, we're always happy to support students. And even if you do get out, we're a great organization. It's only $100 a year. It's just a lot of lifetime worth it. That's all I have.
Chad, thank you so much. And definitely I'm happy to get to the next one. But we really appreciate what you're doing.
Good luck with the academic years. See you when we're out there. Okay.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a great weekend. Remember, you can have a All right, guys. Take care. That's okay. What I'll do is give you I'll give you means 15. I'll kind of give you some visual cues, but there's good information for that. And it actually, most of what you said reinforced the discussions that we've had on ethics. The one thing that I've said to them that is really, really important is that they need to understand ethics should be a part of who they are, not something you do external. And some people kind of think of it that way, and it's a wrong way of looking at it, because it becomes a part of how you operate and engage with people. The restrooms out here, I'm going to go step outside, and then but I've got this set up now where you can see when students pop in, but if you get too far from the computer, they're not going to be able to hear you. And it's something about the mic on the computer. Now, it's a separate recording on Echo 360. So if they can't hear you, they can see you and see the PowerPoints, but they can go to Echo 360 and hear you actually. Yeah. That's an after effect recording. It'll be available to them tomorrow. Yeah. I'll be right back. Oh, no, I've got one for you. Can you I'll be right back. Are we supposed to print that out?
I don't think you have to have it, or management will have it. I know it's like maybe
The last class. I think the examples. Things you said. I'm paraphrasing. I mean, really understand. Many of them have like even from Shaw. So the more they hear about FBI, the more they're going to go into and paraphrase and tell them of who they are. Yeah, well, it's a little different though. It's kind of a process of assimilation. Yeah. Hey, anmol. Nicholas, can you guys speak to me just for a second? Say hi. Nicholas? Okay, Nicholas, what I'm going to do is I'm going to back away from the computer. You're still going to be able to see me. I want to know if you can hear me, okay?
I can hear you.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so it should be good. Wandering like my kid over here. Thanks, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So how's everybody doing? I like the response. Awesome. Got big plans for the weekend? Homework? You too could be back into 2315, right? You guys remember that? CSC 2315, discrete structures? Yeah? Yeah. It's kind of an underpinning as far as coding and a way of thinking. So since you guys have already gotten past it, just feel for the sophomore and freshman who haven't gone through that. And perhaps some master level students that are taking it as a makeup class that they didn't have in the previous university. Great plans then include studying and keeping up with the assignments. Anything fun that anybody's going to be doing over the weekend? Oh, resting. Well, that's always good. Well, guys, I'm going to go ahead and give you some reminders, and then I'm going to introduce our guest speaker. And please feel free at any point, if you have any questions, just raise your hand. Our guest speaker will be happy to answer them. But I think he's going to be reserving a little bit of time toward the end also for questions. Remember the statement I've made in the past, be bold, right, or go home. That simply means that say what's on your mind, ask the questions. If something is said that you're kind of perplexed at, engage. And that's how we all learn and get better, right? Okay, a few reminders. The attendance sheet is making its way around the classroom. Make sure it ends up, oh, that's my seat. You can come up here and sit in front. Make sure it ends up over in this far corner for me, just so you guys know. And if you don't get to sign it, I'll bring it up to the front at the end. All right, we just had a quiz. That means quiz at any time. Be prepared. We're getting close to exam 2, so the closer we get to exam 2, the less likely that's going to happen. Please also remember that not only do we have a guest speaker today, on Tuesday, we have a guest speaker from Goldman Sachs. Srish Suma is going to be here talking about cloud computing. Assignment number 2 is due tonight, 11:59 p.m. That guest speaker's report is due Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. And there's nothing really difficult about the guest speaker's report. I think that's pretty much it. Jay Demler has come to us to join our class to give us a talk on ethics in the workplace. And realistically, I got to tell you this, he's done it in such a way that's a little different from how I've seen it before, and I think it's great, and how he walks you through the progression of getting ready for a job and then getting jobs. So, Jay is a vice president in the organization called Asaka, and they are involved in audits, training, and certifications. CMMI, we've mentioned in the past. CMMI was developed by Carnegie Mellon. I'll let you tell you what's new about that. And so just give him a great welcome, and I'll turn it over to him.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out. You have to be here, so maybe might take the ride. So, as Press Cross said, my name's Jay. I'm come out here to talk to you about Ethics Day, and what I really wanted to do was that there's a whole department on ethics somewhere out there, and things like that. So we're not here to talk about the theoretical or the kind of classical academic models of ethics. I wanted to come out and talk to you about there, or plan corner. I want to talk about things that are going to pertain more to you, right? We're all, as juniors, as seniors, people that are going off, or you're going to go to grad school, or you're going to go to your first job, post your degree. You're kind of all at the same spot right now. It's pretty easier to talk to a group like this than say you're just in the community at large. So I just want to talk to you about things in ethics and kind of focus it in ways that you're going to be able to see it in your own life and practice it and things like that. I think Professor Cross said it well. Ethics is not something you do externally. Ethics is something that you do internally, and then it radiates out from you, and how you treat others, how you go about your work, how you go out and live your life. There. So let's get started. So, this thing again. Okay. So what is ethics? There's a very long definition of ethics. Whatever you want to. For our sakes, what I want ethics to mean to you today, and take nothing else out of this, is ethics is doing the right thing at the right time, in whatever way, shape, or form. Personal life, professional life, in the way that you conduct your business, in the way that you live your lives. It's doing the right thing at the right time. Doing the right thing at the wrong time, that's about half of it. But doing the right thing at the right time, there's that kind of intersection about there. Again, we're here to talk about it in your early stage career. How you're going to kind of launch yourself out there, and setting yourself up for having an ethical and moral career starting at home. It isn't always straightforward. Ethics can, there's a lot of different views on it. There could be cultural views. There could be, societal views or things like that of what is the right thing. Kind of the historic, there are kind of these ethical dilemmas that they kind of present in academic settings. One's called the trolley car. It's where a trolley car is coming down the track, and there are 5 people tied up on the track, and you can't do anything about it except pull a lever and move the train track to another, move the trolley or the train or whatever to another track on the side, but that will kill one person. Someone's going to die here. You're 5 people or one person, and that's kind of this ethical dilemma. And then they go back and then they go through another iteration. And then you say, well, obviously one person is better than 5. We're killing people on paper here, and then they go and throw the loop, they throw you for a loop in that. There's 5 people you don't know, and that one person was yourself. Right? So there are these kind of classical things. We're not going to, kind of go into things like that because that's all again theoretical. But the last thing, and I'll talk about this kind of through the talk, is your career is going to be longer than you think. You are going to see people again, either the people you went to school with, or you're working with from one organization organization to another, one department to another, however your career takes place, you will see each other again. The world is getting smaller. LinkedIn and Facebook and all these other things. Things that you do and the way you conduct yourself, that will, follow you along. And because we have things that are, it's not just some person who's working together. There is a digital reference, a written reference to some of these things, or a written reference to the work that we've done. Having it, starting out ethically, starting out on the right foot is the right thing to do. So, who am I? Well, I'm Jay. Again, I am from ISACA, which we are a not-for-profit sports university. We actually have a science department. I do have a real job. My ISACA job is my volunteer job. I do have a real job. I'll kind of reference it throughout my talk, but it's sales. But I do work in IT, so I have a background in studying and kind of things that you do looking down roles. I guess the other thing is I've been around long, right? This is the second time I've given this talk, 10 minutes ago. The first time I gave it. But I referenced that I'm not as old as some people that are out there in the workforce. I'm not as young as you are. But I have seen some things. I have, going through my first job or my second job is not been that terribly long ago. I do have a son now, and I don't really remember. I haven't slept much. He's 18 months. He's cute, but man, I don't do a lot of work. But there are certain experiences that I'd like to impress upon you, certain things that I experienced myself, again, coming out of an engineering school and my job, some of the things that were troubling to me. Hopefully I can impart a little bit of this on you. Kind of last on this. So as I do my PowerPoint slides, usually, there's bullet points on the right, but there's kind of the takeaway or the kind of pro tip. Some of them say in the box. So those are kind of practicing ethics is like a muscle. Right? This is not something that you do one day and then forget about it. Right? You wouldn't go out and train for a marathon by going out and running a mile today and then like, okay, I'm fine now. I'll go work a marathon. This is something in a muscle that you build over time. It's something that as you become more cognizant of it, both personal and professional lives, it kind of comes easier. Not saying that the problems become easier, but you know yourself better, kind of the ins and outs of the world. I was joking with Professor Cross while we were up here. You'd be surprised how much more life makes sense after 25, or after you get married, or after you get children, like that. There are references in your life that you just don't have. There are references in life that you just don't have yet. Maybe some of them. But there are certain things in life that will help you grow and things like that. And ethics is something that will grow and mature over time, but you have to continue to work on it day in and day out. So the way I have broken up this talk is I've kind of put it into three pieces. Preparing to launch, which is you now. Okay, sitting in that chair, going out, getting an internship, getting a full-time job, going through your interviews, whatever it is, we're preparing to launch. That is the first section. Then there is the launch section. There's the launch section. And that is the section that you've gotten your first job. This is what, things to expect, things that may pop up, like that. And then lastly, there's the relaunch, and that's kind of getting the first job into a new position. Your own organization, going to a different organization, needing work, coming back to academics, whatever way that your life goes about. That's kind of how I structure this thing. And the reason I structure that is it's relatable all to you. We'll all go out. We're all going to finish. You're all working on finishing college. You're all going to go have a first job. You're all going to have a second job. Things like that. Life only just gets kind of more interesting from here. So the first thing I would like to tell you is to finish college strong, right? So you're all juniors, things like that. Think back to your freshman year, right? Freshman year, for a lot of you, if you are good students, you've made it through a regular program, you've gotten thus far, chances are you have good academic preparation, things like that coming into college. Remembering back to your freshman year, you're taking English Comp 1, Calculus 1, Chemistry 1, things like that. A lot of it looked like the 13th grade. I didn't go here to UTA, but it was a very similar school. And I did feel that my first year wasn't that bad. As you get into your junior and senior year, and you get much more complex subjects that you're getting in, there's a lot more teams projects, there's a lot more deliverables. The classes that you have, there's a lot more. They're stretching you both academically and timeline management. that. It leaves open the possibility of making unethical decisions, of plagiarism, of not putting in your best effort, not contributing as a team member on a group project or things like that. I know what seems, some of you are tired, some of you are very tired. You work, some of you have families, you've been doing this a long time, that you just kind of just get it done, just get it done, whatever, just get out of the way. Let's just get out there, get a job, start making money, getting on with our lives. Done with college. A lot of us have felt that way. My sister wants to stay in college for 7 years of her life now. I think she went to school for 5. But she never wanted to leave. I definitely was not that person to get out. I wanted to have money on buy a car, buy more video games, whatever I was spending money on, stupidly, whatever. I'm going to challenge you to stay strong and do the right thing. You have a university honor code, you have a university system, things like that. You have come too far to trip on something. I think, oh, well, that's fine. No, fine, hold on. That's not, you can't look at it as, I've worked so long, let's just get out of it. You have to look at it, I just have to. And that's how you can, they're just like the opportunity to make some decisions and do the right thing, right? Again, doing the right thing at the right time. Time is now, and you continue to go to school, projects, doing the work in your own work, and presenting the work honestly with integrity. Going into your internship, so I will kind of give you tidbits of kind of getting your first job. You can listen to things. Your internship, especially successful internship, is probably the easiest way for you, the pathway of least resistance into getting a full-time job. Impressed with your work ethic, the work that you do, for being a good partner, for being a good employee, for being a good teammate, for being a good peer, is generally the easiest way for you to land a full-time role and then not having to go out. You've already done the work, right? You're the internship. You're interested enough that you take whatever. It's just getting to end of it. But doing the right thing when you're on, treating people with dignity and respect, understanding, how to work in a corporate organization, understanding the deliverables that you're being asked to produce, the type of work that you're being done, the expectations of your role. It's very important. Ignoring it, you may by the end of your internship not be interested in. I'm sorry, those you may not be interested in working with that company. Maybe it doesn't work out. We see that internships generally lead to full-time jobs, more so in some areas than others. Accounting, consulting, things like that have a much higher rate. Like 90% of those can turn into a full-time job versus some of the other ones are just, we specifically have an internship program and there may or may not be jobs at the end of it. It's very important that you, again, treat people well, be a good partner, be a good employee, be a good peer while you're there. And we'll go into this kind of third bullet here in a little bit in the next slide, in a lot more detail. But how you craft your resume, how you are presenting yourself. There are some ethical dilemmas there about what you list on your resume, right, is your paper or digital persona, how you present yourself out to potential employers, out to potential grad schools, whatever you are applying for. You have to be cognizant of how you're presenting yourself, what you're putting in there. And again, this is a written, is an artifact, we call it, of your career so far. And I already talked about how to treat your peers, but we'll talk about that more when we talk about that. So the first ethical dilemma that we have, right, is how you are going to present yourself out on your resume. Now, who is Marissa Mayer? Not reading the line. She was the CEO of Yahoo, and selling it out to. She's a very early employee at Google. Rose through the ranks as CEO of Yahoo, selling it off to Verizon. But it didn't really work out. No address or play fantasy football on that reason. But I'm not listing her resume up there because she's an unethical person. I'm listing it up there for one of the things we talked about, and we talked about this in last class, is that a lot of people, especially technical people, especially introverts, which many of us are, suffer from something called imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is, and how did we put it, Professor Cross? We said it was self-doubt and kind of delusion of where you are at today that you don't know. Oh, I'm not very good at, I wasn't very good at my I can't believe I got this internship. I obviously you're more qualified. I'm a fake. How that permeates though is that you have to be cognizant of that. You all have self-doubt. You all have self-doubt of the things that we either accomplish. I've met PhDs, we've had that are fellows that make big strides in the industry that still have no idea how they got it. They are not deserving of the praise and the work that they've done so far that they are. And it's like an over humbleness, right? You can be humble, you should be humble, but you can't be over humble. You're doubting that you're good enough or fast enough. What was that movie? Good enough, smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. Is an older one. I reference films a lot, so I apologize if I
Do they get bonus points?
Sure, they can get bonus points. I will give out as many bonus points as you know I can. I don't. That's an ethical dilemma. Do I give out fake bonus points? So what? The reason that her resume is up there, you are not competing with her, and I want you to take a look at when your resume. You do make one and things like that. Your resume is out there to impress someone enough to want to talk to you more. Well, it shouldn't impress them because of things that are put on their post, right? So a resume has kind of two different parts, right? It has the factual parts, your name, your address, your email. This is the degree that you're getting, the university you went to, your GPA, things like that. Those are all provable, hard facts, right? You can't really change those. There are ways to follow up on this. Is this your phone number? Well, I'm going to call you. You answer. It's your phone number. There are whole systems here set up at the university to make sure that, yes, I went to UTA. Yes, I got a computer science center. Yes, I got things like that. There are whole systems set up for that. The second part of your resume is kind of and what a lot of career services and a lot of career coaches and resume coaches will talk about is expounding on your success at that. I was on my senior project, I was the team lead for my project, and we had we got a really good grade and things like that. It's easy to expound or add fluff to some of those things. You have to be careful about that. Because at the end of the day, and I think probably an easy one is, on my resume, I can code in these 12 languages. Maybe you only kind of code in 3 of them, and you're just kind of vaguely familiar with the other 9. When you're representing yourself, you need to represent yourself in an ethical way and put yourself out there in a way that's honest and true, and you can back up, right? The worst thing to be do is I speak all these languages. I speak, I speak. I can write in Python. I can write in whatever else, whatever the Apple programming language. I can do C. I can go, and in all of the way at the bottom it says you can program an octal. None of you have heard of octal. There's a reason for that. That's why it's that. Right, an octal should be about 6. So, yeah. You program magnetic charges to spin one way or the other with octal. An old Navy programming language, if I remember right. I've heard of it. But being called out is especially because with the way we are submitting resumes today, the way that resumes are being searched, the way that resumes are being snatched off the internet through LinkedIn or Indeed or some type of company system like Grassroots or Workday, things like that, they're keying on these keywords. Well, if your keywords are on your resume, you need to have the ability to back that up. So if you say something, means something. And if you should be proud of the accomplishments that you have. You don't need to. If you were the senior project leader, you had won some of the work, something like put that down. Be proud of the work that you did, but don't say that. I worked on this project and it saved us $28 billion. And going into it thinking that no one can ever check up on that. That's the information. Cover something like that. Have your resume recognized for the right reasons, not for the wrong ones. So the one thing that's going to be different for you, is different for me, Professor Crossman, your other faculty that here are, you have so many online personas outside of what we have, right? When I went and applied for a job, Facebook didn't name me. Actually, it had been invented. It really wasn't, I don't think it was that big yet. When I applied for my first job, Facebook hadn't been invented yet. There was no, I think I could have a MySpace profile. But the things like a LinkedIn and a Indeed, things like that. Like I applied to jobs on Monster.com. I don't even know if that thing still exists anymore. But your personas, you know, that's how you go out and represent yourself, either digitally or platforms and social media. And it's very easy to hide behind that. I think the joke, and this is going to be a movie reference for a bonus point. How do I know? You know, and it was a character in a video game, and said that was a Tinkle Fairy 1, 2, 3, 4, and the other player in that game said, "Well, how do I know you're not another just a 300-pound guy named Shock?" You got that reference? It actually might have been in the book, not the movie, which is another hint. Video game. There you go. All right, I got you that. Big thumbs up. I should really get evidence. Sorry. My sister's a second grade teacher, and she gives out Cheetos. Second graders are not. I love Cheetos. There's second graders, so they're all covered. She works at a school, and she lives in Virginia. And their mascot is a tiger, and apparently Cheetos makes tiger paws. So it's like a Cheeto, but it's in the shape of a paw or something like that. I don't know. They'll do things for a Skittle. From off the floors, I'll give you Skittles. They'll do it. Again, tangent. Sorry. But making sure your online persona is actually matched, right? You're going to have a LinkedIn. You're going to have your social media. That's something that you do. You're going to have your resume on there, things like that. It's easy to, again, hide who you are online, but eventually, especially getting a job, you have to come off of online, right? This follows you. We're talking in the last class. Some of this stuff, you're going to be the first generation that spent most of your lives online, and the ability to spend it online. And it's hard for us to fathom that this stuff will outlive you. If you live to 100 years old, this stuff will be out there on the internet. Somewhere, right? So be cognizant of that. There are definitely people that have not been offered jobs due to pictures on Facebook. I'm saying that what you do in your free time isn't your own business, but there are companies are this is the state of Texas, and there's at-will employment and at-will hiring. So things like that have come back to mind from time to time. But make sure your persona is matched, right? You're presenting, you're ethically and morally presenting who you are, the package that you're giving them, and things like that. Now, saying that, if you're into video games or monster truck rallies or knitting or whatever else you're in, some of that isn't relevant and really should be someone else knows what you do. I think what is that, the DuckDuckGo commercial that's on the radio now? We have no, oh, what kind of dog is that? None of our business. Oh, what were you doing at 1:34 last night? Oh, none of our business. It was DuckDuckGo, the VPN. They compete with like orders. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. I couldn't figure if it's that or more VPN. I see that commercial. And no, it was a DuckDuckGo, but I think I crossed that. So there are things in your personal life that don't spill over, but there are certain things that companies are more interested in not. You are maybe more interested in not spilling over into your corporate lives. It may cause problems. But I'm really talking about things that you put out there on your LinkedIn, on your resume, on resumes that you submit on your, especially for you guys that are computer science majors, software engineering majors, your GitHub repository, any type of code you're putting out there, any websites that you're building, or any projects that you're putting out there. Being ethically and presenting work that you have done. And I'm not saying that you can't take a piece of code or a piece of script or things like that and rearrange it and make it and things like that. But make sure you're giving credit. We'll kind of talk about that later in life. These are, taking all of these pictures of things, I just pulled them off. Oh, this guy's ethical because he's wearing a tie. That doesn't. These are just, the percentages. I don't even know if these are real people. These could be CGI generated. Actually, I think I pulled this off one university's website, so I'm assuming they were students at some point in time. But, when you're presenting yourself online, are you doing it in an ethical manner? Are you doing it in a consistent manner? and understanding that, unlike when I went to apply for a job, or Professor Cross went to apply for a job, you handed them a paper resume or applied online, there weren't all these myriad of other students out there that were also conveying information about us that are publicly available. You know, there is a lot more now, and it's a lot different for you than it would be, you know, for someone, you know, a little older. So when you go into an interview, so you've gone, you know, you've gone through, you've written your resume, you've reviewed it, you put in factual information, you put in, you know, your LinkedIn's great, you put in a great headshot, you're wearing a tie, so that makes you much more ethical, right? You've taken care of all those things. What are the things that are going to do next? So a couple tips. And again, I told you I would use some kind of interview tips. The phone interview. You are generally going to get some type of HR person, a hiring manager, someone, you know, some type of manager, because people are busy, right? Trying to hire people. Again, every company right now is kind of hiring on everything. You know, there's a need for workers right now that we're just not finding in all levels. I think it's just not an entry level type of job. There are, you know, plenty of computer science jobs, engineering jobs out there. When you're doing that, you know, the first, you're probably going to get a call. Now, again, when I got these calls, that was when we were actually answering the telephone because they weren't 99% spam if you didn't know the number. So, you know, answering things like that. I have been caught coming out of the shower, eating, going to class, driving the car, whatever. There are certain times that it's just inappropriate to have that. And what I would recommend to you is you want to be your best self when you are having this engagement. When you have gotten past a LinkedIn job, you know, or applying for a LinkedIn job, Indeed job, or going to a career fair, things like that. When you've gotten to that, you know, you're actually talking to a human person, a human, you know, a non-robot on the other side. That's a big first step, and you want to be at your best self. When you're being at your best self, you can make ethical decisions. You set yourself in an ethical light, more so than if you're just, you know, you're driving down 30 with a bag of Wendy's on the phone, makeup on late in class, and things like that. Hi, yeah, we just wanted to talk to you, and do you know C#? Oh, yeah, C#, yeah. C#, you know, blah, 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 blah. You know, representing yourself, it is very, very acceptable to say, hi, thank you for calling me. This very moment is not a good time. Can I call you at this same number in an hour? And I said that, things like that. And trust me, everyone's going to be very respectful of that. Put yourself in a place like both be ethical and put yourself in a place like to be successful, right? Standing, dripping wet with a towel around you while your phone's plugged into the wall at you know, 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning before class and running late and all these dogs barking, whatever. But that's not what you need. Put yourself in the right position. One of the other things that you can do about phone screens is that they are putting screening questions. They are trying to whittle down, right? So there's the electronic system, right? 100 people put in their resume for a job, and they'll cut that down into 20. From that 20, maybe they'll call that, you know, they'll cut down to 20 because these are 20 best. These 20 best candidates, we're going to talk to on the phone, and we want to whittle that down to 5, right? So when they ask you these, they're trying to screen out, you know, into the 5 we want to talk to. Don't. Be very cognizant of the questions that they ask, and be straightforward and honest if they ask you questions. No. So if they ask you a question of, do you know certain programming language? Do you have certain user experience? Blah, blah, blah. Be honest, especially on things that, you know, come up later. You should be honest on all of these things, especially do you know Python? Well, yeah, you know Python. I can spell Python. Again, I'm sorry online. It is perfectly okay to say, no, I don't have experience in that. No, I don't have the ability to do that, or no, I don't have the years of experience that you're asking for. That's fine. Being open and honest and forward with them. It may not be a great fit, right? You don't want to you don't want to be a round peg and square hole, or vice versa. Like it says in the orange box, this is a two-way street. You need to fit with them, they need to fit with you. And you want to know that up front before you invest any more time in them, is that, hey, you know, maybe this isn't because you don't meet the requirements or things like that. Now, I will give you a question that actually is on Actually, I'll say that one for another one, but actually you have a question that AWS actually asks in interviews. So for in-person interviews, you've gotten to that next step, right? Okay, you've impressed me enough over the telephone that I am actually going to spend time with you in the flesh. This is before the pandemic. Spend time with you in the flesh, in person, and talk to you some more. Maybe we'll bring some. So what are some tips in there? Number one, treat everyone with respect. And when I mean everyone, I mean everyone. I mean the security guard, the admin at the table, or the admin at the desk that you check in at, the janitorial staff, anyone that you meet, right? No one is above anyone else. We're all working. We're all these people in this organization are trying to move the organization forward, but what best way that they can in whatever way that they fit in there. Oftentimes, and you'll see this a lot if you're asked to go out to lunch, maybe or something like that. Maybe you have an interview and they go, "Oh, we're going to go to lunch. Let's go out to lunch." And, they're gauging how you're interacting with other people, the wait staff, the hostess. They're getting you out of this comfort zone of, oh, we're in a conference room and I have this list of questions. They are testing you on multiple different things. They're also probably testing you on your, they're at least judging you on what you order for lunch and if you order alcohol. But, there are a lot of things that they're kind of going into that. Make sure that you are treating everyone with dignity, making sure you're treating everyone with respect. You would be surprised how much power what we'll call gatekeepers hold in the hiring process. Any manager worth his salt is going to go out to the admin at the front desk. How did they treat you? Polite to you? Were they on time? Did they seem, did they act above, did they put on airs or things like that? They're following up because obviously you need to impress the person that, you're going to work really hard and try to impress the person that's going to be giving you the job. But what about all the other people? And I don't want to call them little because it means whatever work they do. But, all the other people that are there, did they treat, were they in the room with other people that were interviewing the same, were they all sitting in a lobby waiting with other people? Did the janitor come by? Did they say anything like that? They are testing you on multiple different levels. And again, a hiring manager, worth his salt is going to be finding those different angles. When you get asked questions, the one thing that you don't want to do is kind of bumble along. I think actually we'll do the AWS question. So you are a computer programmer and you have a multi-tier application having database performance issues. What is the correct answer? Or what is the best what's the best solution for fixing this database problem? Now, you may not know what I just asked. You may not, and you trust me, you will sit in an interview one day and not know what the person just asked. It is okay to say you don't know. It's okay to ask for more clarification. And actually, the best kind of answers in the way that you can kind of impress the most, I always find, is that if you don't know the answer, but you're going to logically approach it. Well, I don't know that answer for I don't know what the best solution is for fixing a database performance issue. But these are the steps that I would take. Number one, I would look at capacity and bandwidth. Number two, I would look at making sure that we are up to date on the software, making sure that this is supported release by the software company. I would put in a ticket with the vendor or do all these other things, and then hopefully and go about your kind of process with that and say that you didn't know the answer, but what you did is you showed them that you had a logical and thoughtful way of actually solving the problem. Sometimes that's much more valuable than getting to the answer. If any of you ever interview to be a consultant at like Boston Consulting, McKinsey, Bain, things like that, that's actually they are not actually interested in the answer. You ever been asked you haven't been to that many interviews, but someday you may be in an interview and they ask you how many mattresses are sold in the US that year. No joke. How many tires are sold in the US? Yeah. So they're not asking for an answer. They're asking for a cost. Well, this is how we went about it. And that's actually, very telling in that, it gives them more insight. If you don't know the answer, don't give them something just to give them an answer, because you either don't know or try to go wrong. If the question was, hey, this database is having problems, and you answered that, well, the flux capacitor must be out of sync and we need more plutonium. That's movie reference. Right? Movie reference, anybody? Thank you. All right. Pay the man, Charlie. That's another reference which you will not get. That's sports writer.
What if the interviewer really?
Well, I mean, they're going to know it was the wrong answer. I mean, you can joke. I tend not to tell jokes until the end. You have to be careful with jokes because you don't know their person. You generally will be. But don't give them a BS answer. You say you don't or go. The answer to that, so that was an AWS question. On, find AWS questions online. The answer that they wanted was sharding. Any of you know what sharding is in the database? Nope. Sharding is a horizontal scaling of databases across multiple nodes. Right? You can vertically scale something. You buy a bigger box, you buy a bigger database. Horizontally scaling is slicing the work of that database across multiple servers and multiple VMs. No reason any of you should have known that. But that was the answer that they wanted, but most people weren't going to get that, so they would go through and they were looking. A good answer, again, is following a logical progression. It's okay to say you don't know. The most important thing. But what you can do is you can kind of turn that around. It's not an ethical thing. It's again, it's a job interview thing. Turn a question that you don't know around. This is what I do know about it, how I would approach it. And that's honestly, a lot more insightful than if I just went sharding. Everything's sharding, unless they were again really into Back to the Future or sharding, things like that. But it is important to be ethical and making sure that you're presenting yourself, because the things like that, BSing people and stringing them along, and things like that, one of the easiest ways to get you discounted from a position. And I think the last thing is expect the same thing in return. Again, this is a two-way street. I've actually turned down a job. I actually interviewed for a job a long time ago, and I didn't even have a job. I interviewed in Arlington. There's a company out here that does promotional items. So you get things that have like the UTA logo on it, right? And it should say maybe on the back, sponsored by Pepsi, sponsored by Bank of America, sponsored by Bob's Funeral Home, whatever it is. There's a company in Arlington that actually manufactures this stuff. And I had went for an interview there. And I'd shown up, I was wearing my suit, had my leather folio, I had my printed resume, sat down there. And I'm very junior. It's a junior sysadmin job. And I sat, and I was there 10 minutes early, and I waited. I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And an hour after my interview began, which was supposed to begin, the manager came back into the lobby and said, "Oh, yeah, I guess our interview's now." And I was trying to make light of it. Again, to the joke is that, I really appreciate, it looks like you're really busy. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. Sorry that the times didn't work out. I was happy to wait, just to kind of brush it off lightly and say, dude, you're an hour late. I'm sitting in your lobby. And he goes, "Oh yeah, I was out doing my other job." He's like, "Well, I own a consulting gig, so I was out trying to sell this product. What's up, Gold?" Kind of a what's up, Gold. I was out trying to sell this product with my company, and then I just came back and was like, "Oh, I'll get to these interviews when I get around." What that showed me is that number one, the guy wasn't very ethical. He was trying to run his own business on company time. Number two, he didn't have enough respect for me to be on time, to be on time and be cognizant of the effort that I was putting in to get this to interview for this job. And then lastly, do I want to work for a guy who's got one foot out the door already of this organization? And that's how they conduct business. And that either that's acceptable or this guy's doing it behind the guy flatly, openly said it to me in an office, so I'm assuming everybody else knew as well. But that either they were running their business, taking care of their employees, were there contributing, or this guy was doing it behind the scenes. I don't even remember what he asked me. I left the interview and I talked to the recruiter after that. And I said, "No, this isn't the job for me. I want to thank you for having the opportunity, but after talking to the manager, it's just not something I'd like to move forward with." Understand that this is a two-way street. It's very difficult, especially because you're trying to get your first job, you're trying to get your foot in the door, and it may look like a great opportunity like this. If it doesn't feel good, if it doesn't seem right, feel free to walk away, right? What you would rather do is say no thank you at the beginning than to go in like, "Well, I can overlook that. Oh, I can, that doesn't bother me," things like that. And then 6 months later, you're doing everything you can to get out of there, right? So there are, instances, and it is a two-way street. You need to ethically interact and work with with other individuals, and they need to do the same. And that should be your expectation. Again, it is hard at the very earliest levels of your career because number one, you either don't recognize it, or number two, you feel like you're the little person, right? Oh, this is a big company, all this, just a little guy, just a little girl, and this, and you're doing everything you can to get this job. Trust me, there will be jobs that you interview for or talk to, whatever, in your career that you just walk away from. That's the right thing to do. So that's kind of getting me preparing to launch, right? You've done all this work, you've gotten the resume, you've gotten your LinkedIn, you've had interviews, accepted an offer. And I'm not going to go into the juggling multiple offers, accepting an offer that I'm not going to go through that. It's a whole nother talk that we actually do at iSoftware. We'll invite you to that later. But let's just say that you're all going to get jobs, right? You will all get a job. Trust me. It may seem unfathomable sometimes, but trust me, you will all get jobs because you are computer science majors and software engineers. You work very hard in a bunch of good schools, that accredited program, all those happy, nice things. You will get a job in computer science. Don't in program. Don't worry. So launching, so starting your career off, right? So being cognizant, you need to be cognizant of how you are being treated, how the organization is treating you, and how the organization is treating others. These are things to look out for, especially in your early career. Now, I will tell you that when you come into an organization, right, an organization is a pyramid. At the very top is the CEO and the board of directors. As an entry-level employee, you occupy kind of a job. And that's okay. But that doesn't mean that you need to overlook ethical dilemmas. You won't have ethical challenges presented to you along the way on things. As you move up that pyramid, as you move from one pyramid to another, things like that, these things do happen. Now, your ability to invoke change at certain levels is very different, right? I mentioned this a lot in the last talk that I gave again 10 minutes before you walked in. Who is Elizabeth Holmes? Theranos CEO, who is on trial this week for fraud, a bunch of other things. So if you're an entry-level employee at Theranos, there are only so many things that you can do because, again, you are not going to see things that are permeating fraud or things like that. You're doing your job, right? You have your focus like that. There are things that you can see and then things that are not. In the last talk, I asked Professor Cross if he'd ever met the CEO of the company. He has. Very sufficient companies he's in. He was afforded that. I have, until very recently, never met the CEO of any company I've ever worked in. So there are things that could be happening well above in this stratosphere that I have no idea. But there's not much that I can do about that. But there are, at every level, there are ethical. One of them is unethical leadership. And I'm not talking about, well, the CEOs of that. CEO is Elizabeth. CEO is Bernie Madoff. And Bones Point, who is Bernie Madoff? Just say Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he was his own money, whatever. So the guy went to jail forever, and things like that. There is leadership at other levels, right? If one person is reporting to you, even just kind of, for a project or things like that, that makes you a leader. And that means you will always be reporting to someone. Leadership at every level can be, can be an ethical dilemma. How you treat individuals, right? And maybe we see movies or things like that. If you've seen Wall Street, or Wolf of Wall Street, or what was the one where Gordon Gekko said, "Greed is good"? What movie was that? Was that Wall Street? Right. Okay. They were not the Shia LaBeouf. I really hate remakes. So maybe reference about me. Wall Street or Wolf of Wall Street or anything. Oh, we're screaming at people and get these things done and do this and that. Or you see some kind of sports thing and then, yeah, you're an idiot or things like that. Or the worst one ever. Gunnery Sergeant Hartman from. Thank you. That guy's getting all the. So, this screaming and that is unethical leadership. And that could happen at any level, right? I have seen CEOs berate employees. I have seen purchasing managers berate vendors. I've seen, you will see these things. There is unethical leadership. And not only, it may not even be directed at you, but there are things to look out for that. number one, how you were being treated and how you were treating them. At some point in time in your careers, I'm sure all of you will have someone reporting to you, even if it's just for something. It might be a project or it might be something else. You will be senior to someone, and that puts you in a position of leadership, and that puts you in a position of trust. That you can't be, that you need to act in certain ways and ethically and morally, and treating people with integrity. Toxic culture is kind of a, I don't say it's nebulous, but it is the culture of an organization, the culture of a group of people, and things like that. And it comes to the point that people no longer want to be there. They have anxiety, they have stress, they have depression, they have all these other things. And, these things can happen. They happen in government organizations, they happen in private organizations, public companies, they happen in private companies. They happen, the culture can become toxic. It's kind of hard to identify what and when and things like that when you were in the thick of it. I think that's the hardest part about culture, because it's just the culture that it is. If you work, if you walk into a